I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1 panel. Let me ask you a question. If a doctor decides to have a child and that child decides to be a doctor, we call that legacy. But if a politician decides to have a child and that child decides to be a politician, we call that corruption. Why is that? The truth is, democracy is not about your surname, your bloodline, your legacy. It's not about where somebody comes from. It's about what they do and whether the people freely chose them or not. Hi everybody, I'm the first speaker from Team Opposition. My name is Arundhati Cettakirana, Fidhy, Pratistha, and today we strongly oppose the motion. This House believes that political dynasties bring more harm than good to democracy. Today, we're debating whether or not political dynasties inherently do more harm than good to democracy. That means we're not judging if political democracies are perfect or free of flaw, but its net impact. Do they strengthen or do they worsen democracy? First of all, let me begin my speech with my setup. The government may claim that political dynasties concentrate power to the hands of the few, or make politics elitist, or they abuse influence, etc. Those are valid concerns, but those problems doesn't stem from political dynasties itself. It stems by broken institutions that fail to hold any leader in power, dynastic or not, because these things happen regardless if you come from a wealthy or big family. It still comes out of anywhere. You can see this in non-dynastic places as well. Our goal here is simple. Our goal here is not to diminish real-life impact or harm caused by political dynasties that has already happened, but to realize these two things. That political dynasties aren't inherently undemocratic. In fact, they function within the rules of a democracy and often reflect voters' trust. The second being the actual harm to democracy, abuse, apathy, and corruption comes from systematic failures and not surnames. Over here in this debate, we want to show you that what truly harms democracy here is systematic failures. It doesn't come from political dynasties. Political dynasties are a system and not the cause. First, before I begin my arguments, I would like to rebuke the first speaker from Team Proposition. At some point, the first speaker talked about how political dynasties concentrate power unfairly. Yes, it's dangerous, but not unique to dynasties. You can have a non-dynastic billionaire with much more power than a dynastic mayor. You can have a military figure or celebrity who uses fame and wealth to gain office. So if we target dynasties alone, we are ignoring the bigger problem here: unregulated access to power, not those who actually hold it. And at some point, they also explained how it leads to favoritism because authorities don't want to lose their seat, so these authorities would play into the favors of these families. However, that is not a result of political dynasties itself. It is a result of weak accountability, not a result of political dynasties. It is if the institutions are strong, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your last name, your bloodline, where you come from, who's your dad. It doesn't matter if the institutions are strong. The real issue here is reforming how we regulate political competitions, which is the true root that we should be uprooting here. The root of the problem is systematic failures, not political dynasties. They also at some point said that people would stop voting because they feel like the same people will come over and over again, so it doesn't matter who they vote for, right? This assumes voters are passive and hopeless, which discredits the political agency of citizens and also does more harm than good to democracy. At some point, in reality, low voter turnout is a symptom of a bigger frustration here. Lack of results, empty promises, vote buying, and things that happen under non-dynastic eras and dynastic eras as well. It happens regardless where you come from. Also, voter apathy can be tackled through voter education, campaign transparency, and open candidate debate. As a whole, corruption, puritanism doesn't come from political dynasties. It is, again, a symptom, not a cause. So let me begin my actual arguments. The first being that political dynasties can actually strengthen democratic legitimacy. Let me continue. So the first framework that I would like to explore is the status quo framework. Voters aren't irrational. They don't vote for dynasties but because they're brainwashed, but they do it because they associate that family with trust, progress, or stability, meaning they vote for somebody who looks like they have already worked their way up, who has already worked towards the merit that other people has been putting them. They've worked towards generations worth of merit. There's also an extra framework that I'd like to explore, which is the fact that dynastic politicians are often born into political environments. That means they grow up learning diplomacy, negotiation, and public service. Many dynastic leaders go out of their way to prove their merit. They don't ride a free pass, they just walk a tighter rope. There's also a systematic framework here. The democratic system has built-in safeguards like elections, media, civil society. If these are strong, dynasties can thrive without harming democracy. The key here is regulation, transparency, and competition. let me link back my whole argument. In democracies where institutions function, dynasties can be strength. If this motion passes, we don't fix elitism. We just punish families who want to serve again. That's targeting a symptom and not a cause. The second argument is more of a principal argument here. The fact that political dynasties do not violate any democratic values, they just uphold them through voter choice. So, democracy is fundamentally about freedom of choice, right? If the people are allowed to vote, and they willingly choose someone from a political family, then that outcome is not undemocratic. It's the very expression of democracy. Removing or discrediting someone solely because of their family name goes against the core democratic principle of equal participation. First, I'd like to explore this in a status quo framework. Democracy is not about guaranteeing who gets elected. It's about ensuring that people can freely choose from among eligible candidates. If citizens see someone from a political family and still choose to vote for them, that is not a flaw in democracy. That is democracy working as intended. To say dynasties harm democracy is to say that the public is incapable of making rational decisions. That's not elitist, it's anti-democratic. Even if that candidate benefits from name recognition, so do actors, so do celebrities, or popular influencers. What matters is that the ballot remains free and fair, not what family a candidate comes from. There's also an actor framework here that I'd like to show you, which is the fact that just because a person comes from a political family doesn't mean they hold power unjustly. Every citizen has a right to participate in the democratic process, including running for office regardless of your background. Disqualifying or discrediting someone simply for being born into a political family is discrimination based on origin, not on merit or action. That is fundamentally undemocratic. Moreover, it is the job of institutions such as election commissions, campaign financing rules, and also public media to ensure fair competition. There's also a systematic framework here. The fact that the problem is system failure, not family ties. If the system is weak, if there's no transparency, if the media is biased, if political education is lacking, then anyone can harm democracy, dynastic or not. In fact, some dynasties uphold democratic systems better than for some candidates because they have reputations to protect, they have to understand the importance of accountability, and they also know how to work within political institutions. What breaks democracy is when institutions allow corruption, inequality, and unchecked power, not when voters choose a familiar name. So let me link back and show the urgency from this one argument that shows that we win, team opposition win. So what happens if this motion passes? If we say dynasties bring more harm than good to democracy, we start building a world where democracy is judged by appearances, not by freedom, not by fairness, not by the voice of the people. We imply that some people based solely on birth deserve fewer rights to lead even if they are qualified, popular, and elected. That is not protection of democracy. That is a rejection of its core principle, the people who decide. So if you truly believe in democracy, you must believe in the right of all citizens to participate, even those born into legacy. Otherwise, you're not protecting democracy, you're limiting it. And that is why in this debate, team opposition wins. Proud to oppose. Thank you very much.